Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending tonight's Miami Beach United Forum. This forum will address our City of Miami Beach charter amendments. Proposed amendments will be on this November's ballot. I want to welcome everyone who's attending, and I hope you're all members. If you're not, I invite you to go to miamibeachunited.org, check us out, and please sign up to join. For over a decade, Miami Beach United has been presenting forums on important topics to our residents like this, free and open to the public, either virtual or in person. And as most of you know, MBO is an all-volunteer organization. We are a nonprofit, and we're dedicated to supporting and advocating on behalf of the residents of Miami Beach. If you're here, it's probably because you already get our newsletter, and hopefully you're already a member. But if not, again, I encourage you to become a member. For only $25 a year, you can help us to provide programs like this. And members also benefit from special programs, happy hours, and an annual celebration dinner. I want to thank all of you who already support us. And together, we are always stronger. The goal of our forum tonight is to explain and discuss the proposed amendments to our city charter and to answer any questions you may have. Every 10 years, the mayor and commission appoint 7 residents to serve on the Miami Beach Ad Hoc Advisory Charter Review Board. MBU is fortunate that this time, 3 of our MBU directors, all of whom are panelists tonight, were chosen to be on that board. Jorge Gonzalez, who chaired the Charter Review Board and will chair our panel tonight, is a former Miami Beach city manager and a founding member of MBU, as well as a current director. Ron Starkman, who served as vice chair of the Charter Review Board, has served on numerous city committees, including the Budget Committee, the Audit Committee, the Neighborhood Resiliency Projects Advisory Committee, and he serves on the SOFNA Board. Ron is our vice president at MBU for Government Affairs. Elizabeth Latone, who in addition to serving on the Charter Review Board, is a current member of our City Planning Board and also is a co-chair of our Strategic Policy and Advisory Advocacy Committee for MBU. Our MBU panelists tonight are joined by an amazing guest panel. Nick Kalergis, Deputy City Attorney, and Miami Beach City Clerk Rafael Granado, as well as former Miami Beach City Attorney Raul Aguilar and Jean Olin. Both Raul and Jean were special counsels to the Charter Review Board. So we thank you all for lending your support and expertise tonight and to helping us inform our residents about the charter amendments. The forum is going to start with the presentation and discussion by our panel of the amendments, followed by an opportunity for questions from our audience. So I'm going to mute my video so you won't see me, you'll just see our panel. And oh, wait, I have to thank Valerie Navarrete, our amazing Valerie Navarrete, advocate for the homeless, advocate generally in Miami Beach for all residents, and chair of our Forum and Events Committee, who is acting tonight as our most capable administrator. Thank you, Valerie. I wouldn't forget you. Valerie and I will disappear a little bit while the panel takes over, and then I'll appear just before the Q&A. With that, I'd like to thank our panelists, and George, I'm going to give the chair to you.
Thank you. Thank you, and welcome everybody for attending. Appreciate your interest in this important topic. As you might have heard, there's this little election that's taking place on November 5th. And among the many different things that you'll get to vote on as a registered voter, there are 7 questions pertaining to the Miami Beach Charter. And for those uninitiated, the charter is kind of like the city's constitution. Unlike the federal government, it doesn't. It gets to be reviewed pretty frequently and routinely, and so every 10 years, as Claire mentioned, the City Commission establishes the Ad Hoc Charter Review and Revision Board to take a look at the charter. The last major comprehensive review took place in 1990. So it had been 30 years since a really thorough review of the charter took place. And we chose this year to, through this committee, kind of go back and look at every article and make sure that if there are changes that needed to be made or enhancements, updates, or improvements or suggestions, initiatives, whatever that might make for better government, that we would approach our task with the idea that we would try to make it as comprehensive as possible. As Claire mentioned, 3 of MBU's members were on the ad hoc charter review board, along with a couple of other people that bear mentioning as well. Michael Band, Julie Basner, Sam Rabin, and as mentioned, Elizabeth Latone, Ron Starkman, and Jorge Gonzalez. We were all the appointed members. We began meeting in February of 2023, and it took us about 18 months to go through and hear from all of the various interested parties, work through the charter, and come up with the series of recommendations that we made in May of this year, when we concluded our report and delivered it to the City Commission. We met with a variety of interested parties, of course, all of the charter officers of the city, a couple of city commissioners. We met with past charter review chairs, the Human Rights Committee, the Budget Advisory Committee, the Miami Housing Authority, Miami Beach Housing Authority, the Miami-Dade County Ethics Commission, the Supervisor of Elections, and a variety of neighborhood associations. So we really tried to make this a pretty broad public outreach and to make sure that we got the input that was needed as we were going through the various questions. And ultimately, we as a committee landed on 9 proposed amendments. And of note is that all of the recommendations that the committee made were voted on unanimously by the board. It's not what we required. A simple majority was all that was needed. But of the 9 recommendations, all of them were unanimous, which meant that there was great consensus among the members of the committee. As I mentioned, that report was presented to the City Commission early this year. In May and June, the City Commission met along with the committee to consider the recommendations and ultimately decide what would be put on the ballot. And in July, the City Commission, as is required to do, placed 7 ballot questions for consideration by the voters. And those are the 7 that we're going to walk through today. We've carved them up so that everybody has an opportunity to present on those 7. But in general, as an umbrella comment, what we were trying to do was enhance the Bill of Rights, which is something that is essential in our charter. We wanted to make sure that we were protecting publicly owned land, to make sure that that is good stewards for the future. We wanted to enhance transparency, ethics, the electoral process. We wanted to make sure that there was ample and proper opportunity for public comment and public notice. And then there was one question that had to do with kind of minor cleanup that was necessary just to do kind of housekeeping and make sure that the charter was up to date based on today's laws. And so why don't I just pass it on to Elizabeth Latone, who's going to handle the first 2, and she can kind of walk through both of those questions, which have to do with the Bill of Rights.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm going to start with the referendum 1. I'm going to read what the city has put out, and then I'm going to read the actual language that is proposed to be in the charter. The referendum 1, the charter's Citizens Bill of Rights, amending existing rights, incorporating county ethics commission's enforcement. The bill the bill be amended, expanding existing right to public records, right to no unreasonable postponements, and right to notice and to be heard on city matters. Amendments including limits on deferring agenda items, increased public hearings, and notice requirements. Incorporating Code Chapter 62, Human Relations, classification categories on which discrimination is prohibited into non-discrimination rights. Incorporating Miami-Dade County Ethics Commission's powers to enforce and impose penalties in addition to existing circuit court enforcement. So let me read, let me finish the second one. The second referendum, the Charter of Citizens Bill of Rights amending circuit court forfeiture remedy. Shall the Bill of Rights, Section C, remedies be amended to provide that the forfeiture of office or employment judicial remedy for willful violations of the Bill of Rights is subject to terms of collective bargaining agreements per state law, and establish that the forfeiture remedy is within the court's discretion instead of mandatory, based on the court's determination that the violator has committed repeated violations of the Bill of Rights. So I'm going to read, if I can, let me get to the right. Let's see where we are. Let me skip the page. No, I didn't. Okay. So the right to be heard. That is a really important, I'm going to try to make this brief, but it's extremely important for the public residents to be heard, not interrupted, not cut off, all of these things. So this is just basically, we already have two Stanley Sutnick Citizens forums at the commission meetings. This is just codifying them. So that language reads as, at each regular meeting of the City Commission, there should be two Dr. Stanley Sutnick Citizens Forums, both attended by a quorum of the City Commission, one to be held at the meeting's commencement and one to be held after 12 noon, at which members of the public shall have an opportunity to address the City Commission on matters relating to the city. The City Commission shall establish an ordinance procedural rules rules of order consistent with this section, which are necessary for the efficient and effective operation of the Sutnick forums, including setting the order and scope of public items for discussion at each of the Sutnick forums. Right to notice. So we had several neighborhood associations come, and one of the items was one that we heard often was that the people are not getting right to notice. So that language reads as, the city shall also provide targeted neighborhood notice, timely opportunities for input, and procedural fairness in hearings for any proposed policy, ordinance, project, or other matter that impacts residents' quality of life as defined by ordinance. Number 7, no unreasonable postponements. This is just adding the language, any city commission agenda, and this is important because we see deferments all the time. This puts a limit on that. Any city commission agenda that has 1, been deferred by the city commission member, 2, has sponsored the item, and 2, has not been heard within 3 regularly scheduled city commission meetings following the meeting date the item was first placed on a city commission agenda, shall be automatically withdrawn, and no item based on the same proposal may be placed on another city commission meeting agenda within the following 3 regularly scheduled city commission meetings, unless this provision is waived by a 6/7 vote of the city commission. Non-discrimination. We added in the language, I'll read the whole code or the whole language. No person shall be deprived of any rights and privileges conferred by law because of race, color, national origin, religion, gender, sexual orientation, disability, marital status, familial status, and we added the language or any other classification category set forth in City Code Chapter 62 entitled Human Relations. Number 17, Chapter 17 of the Citizens Bill of Rights is non-discrimination in city employment and benefits. We added, after the city of Miami Beach shall not discriminate in employment practices and benefits offered based upon any employee or applicant's race, color, national origin, religion, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, disability, marital status, familial status, and we added the language or any other classification category set forth in City Code Chapter 62 entitled Human Relations. Now, this has kind of been a little bit of a question that I've been asked a lot, remedies for violations. So the way the code, the way it read previously was the circuit court had only one option if there were any violations, and that was dismissal for any employee, for any elected official, if there was a violation. What this does is it gives the judge a little bit more leniency so that you are not, I guess, doing lifetime in jail for something that was because you were doing your job. So here's the language, and we'll take, like, if you have questions, we'll take that afterwards. Pursuant to Miami-Dade County law, as may be amended from time to time and concurrent with the Miami-Dade County Circuit Court's jurisdiction over suits alleging violations of this Bill of Rights, the Miami-Dade County Commission on Ethics and Public Trust has jurisdiction to enforce the provisions of this Bill of Rights and may impose any penalty authorized by county code not otherwise prohibited by collective bargaining agreement for a violation of this Bill of Rights, and any penalty imposed by the Commission on Ethics and Public Trust pursuant to this subsection may be enforced in a Miami-Dade County Circuit Court. And that is it. So I will turn that back over to you, George, or we'll just move to you, Ron.
Yeah, Ron, you're up next, and you've got the next two.
Okay, unmute. Yeah, the third charter question asks whether City Charter Section 1.03 should be amended to require majority voter approval for all right-of-way vacations, sales, and leases, 10 years and more, of city property, and amends requirements for sales, lease, vacations, and amends requirements for management concession agreements of 10 years or more. So let me unpack that a little bit. So the Charter Review's main objective in its proposed amendments was to streamline the provisions, and in doing so to create a concise, uniform set of procedures for the disposition of city property. Since 1993, Section 1.03 has been amended numerous times, the end result being that different procedures and requirements applied to different properties. For example, oceanfront properties required a voter referendum to be sold, whereas other properties could be, the sale could be approved by the commission itself without going to voters. So this particular change requires now that all dispositions or long-term leases go to the voters. And this is in recognition of the fact that there are not that many unencumbered city properties anymore. They are quite valuable. They're a significant asset of the city, and that the committee, the board, Charter Review Board felt that really needed to go to voter approval and should not just be left in the hands of the commission, who potentially could be influenced by other interests. Also, one of the other things that this deals with is gets rid of a loophole that existed with respect to vacations, and I'll explain what vacations are. And this has been something that has been a goal of Miami Beach United for a long time, is to get rid of this loophole. A vacation, for example, is where the city effectively sells a street or an alley to a developer, which then would allow the developer to perhaps combine properties, and also would give them extra area, which would increase the FAR or the size of the building that they can put on a piece of property. So this has been, as I said, somewhat of a loophole. This was something that could be approved by the city, allowing the developer to increase their FAR, which would otherwise have required approval by voters. So this particular change eliminates that loophole. It now says that vacations also need to go to the voters for approval. The next item has to do with the dates of election. And this is a resolution that asks whether the city charter should be amended to move the city's runoff election from 2 weeks after the city's general election to the second Tuesday in December, immediately following the city's general election, and establishes a new set of dates for when commissioners will be installed, consistent with this change in the election date. So runoffs occur when you have a commission race in one of the groups where no commissioner gets more than 50%. So this does happen from time to time. And in the past, it was just 2 weeks. And when the Miami-Dade Commission, Supervisor of Elections came to our group. They requested that we extend this to at least 4 weeks after the initial election, because 2 weeks just wasn't enough time to get organized and do another election. And she was also making the rounds to some other cities that also had less than 4 weeks. And so this is effect to comply with that request, should result in more orderly elections. And otherwise there's no significant changes here. So that's takes care of my 2 items. George, back to you.
Great. Thank you, Ron. I will add that the item having to do with the sale or disposition of land is, I think, something that will be the most significant impact we could make here. As Ron mentioned, the land is becoming less and less available, in which case people come to the city and try to see if there's a way that they can do some kind of deal. And in this instance, or now in any instance, I would say, any deal like that or any sale would require voter referendum and approval by the voters themselves, which I think is a great protection for the last bits of public land that the city has. The next 2 items are kind of pretty straightforward as well. One has to do with public hearings. So that's question number 5. In this instance, there are 2 things that are taking place. One is that from now on, if approved, any ordinance that is passed by the city commission will require 2 public hearings with opportunities for the public to speak. Right now, while there are 2 hearings, generally speaking, the commission only takes comment from the public at the second public hearing, when most oftentimes the ordinance is pretty much resolved and it's up for final vote. If this referendum question were to pass, the voters or the residents would have an opportunity to speak at the first hearing as well. And it gives an opportunity to perhaps better influence the outcome of that proposed ordinance. And then at the second reading, they'd still have that same opportunity. The second part of this question allows for the city to publicly notice their ordinances and actions through a comprehensive website. The state of Florida allowed that for cities to take place in the last legislative session. Unfortunately, in the city of Miami Beach, that still was a requirement dictated by the charter. And in the charter, the requirement was that it must be put and advertised in a newspaper of local circulation. As more and more individuals either are not subscribing to the newspaper or are receiving their news through other means, it's imperative that to make sure that we reach out to as many people as possible, create the opportunity for the city to also be able to officially and formally advertise their public notices on a website that is published through Miami-Dade County and linked to the City of Miami Beach website. So that
And save a lot of money too, George.
Yes, of course, it'll of course save on the advertising fees. And then the next question has to do with vacancies. This is a mechanics thing to correct a flaw that has existed in the charter for many years, but never really came up until the unfortunate circumstance where we had a commissioner who passed away in office a few years ago, sadly. The way the charter, if approved, will read is that in the event of a vacancy, the presumption is that there will be an election, plain and simple. However, the commission has the ability to identify someone and appoint them within 30 days if they can secure a supermajority vote. That means a majority plus 1. So in an instant where there's 1 vacancy, you would need to have 5 out of 6 people identify that that person should be appointed. And they have 30 days to do that. Otherwise, it would presume an election. An election would go forward. During the last instance, there seemed to have been a game of chicken taking place where we didn't quite know what might happen after the 30 days expired and whether there would or would not be an appointment. Ultimately, a determination was made by the commission to hold an election. But if they had not done that in the proper time, it could have ended up that we would have ended with 6 members of the commission for a period of time until the next regularly scheduled election. And so this corrects for that. And this basically, again, presumes we will have an election unless you can find somebody worthy enough that a supermajority is willing to vote for them, to appoint them to complete the term, and then an election to follow. And then the last question is more of a housekeeping item. There was recently litigation in another city to determine what it meant to say that you had lived in the community as in order to qualify to run for office, that you must live in the city for 1 year. This clarifies that it must be for 1 year immediately before qualifying. In another city, this issue, I guess, came up, and an assertion was made that I lived for a year in the other city, but not necessarily in the immediate 12 months prior to the election. And there was a loophole that we felt, because of how that came up in another city, we should correct for here as well. And so item 7 corrects for that, and it determines that, in fact, if approved, just to clarify, you must live in the city for 12 months prior to qualifying, and it must be those 12 immediate months preceding the qualifying date. Those are the 7 questions. I would invite Nick. First of all, let me mention publicly as well. Nick Kalergis, Rafael Granado, Gene Olin, and Raul Aguilar were all with this board throughout from day one. They met with us every time, attended all our meetings, and provided excellent support for the work that this committee undertook. So I want to publicly acknowledge and thank them, and then offer them now an opportunity to add. You don't need to go through all of them, but add any clarifications or anything that we missed or anything you guys want to make. So Nick, I'll pass it to you.
Sure. Thank you, George, and thanks for your kind words, and thanks to this group for inviting us to speak to your panel and to your membership. It was a huge team effort to get us to this point, and really I just wanted to just maybe add a few additional comments on some of these. On the dates of the election, the request came from the supervisor of elections because 2 weeks between the general and the runoff is really insufficient to handle the volume of work that goes into conducting an election on the one hand, and on the other hand, it also provides very little time for voters, especially voters who are relying on mail ballots, to be able to receive and cast their votes. So while the supervisor of elections didn't tell us when to hold our elections, it was important to the county that we provide, as Ron explained, at least 4 weeks, and so that's what this measure would do. Another comment I wanted to make
before you go on that one, Nick. Also, the city of Miami Beach holds its elections in odd years. City of Hialeah, City of Homestead, and City of Miami do as well. And part of what she was trying to do is conform them so that all 4 of those cities would be concurrent and held at the same time. So that's why we're hoping that this will work out so that all 4 cities will be dealt with similarly.
That's right, George. Thank you. The other one I wanted to bring up was are the amendments to the city charter that relate to the sale or lease of city property. This measure doesn't just address, it doesn't just include a voter referendum requirement for the sale or long-term lease of any property. It also incorporates in the city charter additional requirements like an advisory recommendation of the city's planning board, a planning analysis, and an appraisal, which are currently required under the city code. This would place those requirements in the city charter. I would also require competitive bidding, which is another requirement in our city code. This would place that in the charter, subject to a waiver, of course, which is provided in the code. And it would provide for a public hearing before the city commission. For management and concession agreements of 10 years or longer, it would keep the current 6/7 commission vote, but it would also require a public hearing and advisory planning board recommendation. see, I think I had a few other notes on the last question on the conforming update. I just wanted to add that the measure would incorporate all non-discrimination classification categories that we have in our city's human rights ordinance. This would incorporate those in the city charter as well. And I don't know, Ralph, Jean, or Raul, if you'd like to add anything else. Those were my notes.
I think we're good. So with that, maybe is it Claire or Valerie, if we can open it up to questions? We're happy to
Sure.
address what we can address.
Okay. Let me start my video just quickly and say that we'll open it up to questions now. We have a few in the chat that I can read, and then if people will raise their hand, Valerie will call on you and unmute you one at a time, probably best. And you can ask your question. We'd like you to keep your questions to about a minute and make sure that they are questions. I'd like to read from the chat, and the question could go to Elizabeth and or anyone else. We have two questions asking, can someone please explain Amendment 1 and 2 a bit more clearly with examples? A layperson's explanation about the relevance of the changes. Elizabeth, do you want to take that one, or?
On a second, let me read it.
And George, honest, anyone else can also chime
Nick,
in.
why don't you jump in? Yeah, you're
Sure.
probably the best
Yeah.
to do this one.
So I'll start with the first one. So the first one includes a full range of amendments which Elizabeth Latone walked through. It incorporates in the charter. I would say I can highlight a few points if you'd like, George. The Stanley Sutnick Citizens Forum is a half-hour public hearing held in the morning and at 8:30, and again at lunchtime during our monthly regular city commission meetings. And during the Stanley Sutnick Forum, the public has an opportunity to appear and address pretty much any issue impacting them as a resident or that relates to the city. This would place the Sutnick Forum in our city charter, which would give it, just an additional safeguard. It also incorporates in the city charter the residents' right to know ordinance, which requires the city to provide targeted electronic notice of certain matters that are defined as matters that impact residents' quality of life. What does that mean? It includes issues on which a registered neighborhood association has taken a position and transmitted that position to the city. If a neighborhood association, or for instance MBU, supports or opposes a measure that's before the city commission, then that becomes a resident's right to know item, and an electronic notice is required for anyone who signed up to receive those notices. It also applies to certain development approvals that would increase intensity or density or traffic and certain other measures beyond what is currently allowed on a particular property. So this would, just like what we're doing with the Sutnick Forum, this would place the residents' right to know in the city charter. I guess a couple other highlights on non-discrimination. The city commission has over the years added additional protected classes to our non-discrimination ordinance. So this would incorporate all of those into the charter. The charter currently protects our human rights ordinance, which prohibits discrimination in housing, employment, public accommodations, and public services. This would add all of those protected classes that we've we've added over the years, this would place them in the charter.
Also, I would say that it gives the public, the city has a habit of deferring and continuing items. This actually sets a limit on that. So if it's been deferred 3 times, it cannot come back again for another 3 months. And nothing like it can be heard as well. So that's a citizens protection measure. It also increases our notice requirements and our public hearings and how we're heard. And I think those are important things. And this Citizens Bill of Rights is important to me. And I think so is the residents' right to know. I think that also, if are there any specific questions regarding someone had asked me yesterday about the circuit court forfeiture remedy. And so go ahead, Nick.
Oh, sorry, Elizabeth, I can walk through that if you'd like, but
yeah, go ahead. No, you're good.
So there are 2 points. The first question, because this is addressed, I think, in both 1 and 2. So the first measure amends the Bill of Rights to reflect existing law, which is that the Miami-Dade County Commission on Ethics and Public Trust has jurisdiction to enforce the provisions of our Bill of Rights. But by county ordinance, the Ethics Commission has that jurisdiction. This is amending our charter to reflect what is already the law. And then the second measure, which is, we can call that amendment number 2. This one amends the provisions in our Bill of Rights that relate to the forfeiture of office penalty. So what the Bill of Rights currently provides is that in a lawsuit by a citizen alleging a violation of the Bill of Rights, a public official or employee who is found by the court to have willfully violated the Bill of Rights shall be required to forfeit their office or employment. And that applies to virtually any office or position of employment within the city. The amendment that the voters will be voting on in November would clarify that the forfeiture of office or employment remedy for willful violations of the Bill of Rights is subject to the terms of any collective bargaining agreements. And this applies to employees who are subject to collective bargaining agreements. So employees who are in classified positions, who are members of unions. That is already a requirement under state law. The disciplinary provisions that are bargained for by the unions in their collective bargaining agreements would control over any local provisions to the contrary. So this conforms our Bill of Rights to existing state law. The second change that this makes is it provides the court with discretion to require forfeiture of office when a willful violator has committed repeated violations of the Bill of Rights. What it currently says is that forfeiture of office is a mandatory penalty. This gives the court discretion to impose forfeiture if a violator has done so willfully and repeatedly.
Thank you. That's chat questions on 1 and 2. I think you got a really wonderful full answer from 2 of our panels. Valerie, do we have hands up?
There was a hand up until now, and that just disappeared.
Okay, I've got some more chat questions. Amendment 4, Miami-Dade County should hire more workers and they should be MB residents. Could this be a viable option? I don't know that that's included under Amendment 4.
Yeah, what they're talking about here is the fact that we're delaying that the runoff election is currently 2 weeks after the general election, and that this is going to extend it to 4 weeks. And so the first thing I'd say is that it's not the city, it's the county that runs the election. So the Miami-Dade supervisor of elections makes those decisions and hiring decisions and so forth. Second, I think it's really, as Nick said, it's really 2 weeks is really not enough time today when we have so many mail-in ballots. When everybody voted on election day in 2 weeks and you didn't have the extent of the mail-in ballots, then 2 weeks maybe wasn't such a problem. But now you got to allow time for people to get their ballots, to look at it, to think about what they want to do and to mail it back. And 2 weeks just is too tight. So I think this is going to work out better also for those voters who vote by mail, including a lot of seniors who would vote by mail.
I think we got a hand, Val.
Yes, we have a caller, Miami. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, I want to Jamin. Regarding this amendment regarding the elections, this I think is Miami-Dade County's battle, not Miami Beach. We live in Miami Beach. If they have a problem with elections and how to basically conduct an election or a runoff, I think they have to sit with their team and decide how they're gonna do this. It's not gonna, I don't think it's gonna fit right with the voters of Miami Beach. Most of them are Spanish. Mail-in votes are filled in the building, in the lobby, with everybody there. It's done all the time. Rebecca Towers, Stella Marie's, Council Towers, what have you. They're the majority of voters. So I think this is gonna present a problem
Thank you
with
for
most voters,
you.
because it's a Miami-Dade problem. If they don't have workers, they should give an incentive to Miami Beach residents so they could hire more people to work for those 2 weeks.
That was the question. Was it your question in the chat?
Yes, it was.
Oh, okay, so that was your question basically, or that was your kind of comment. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just reiterate, it is a Miami-Dade County supervisor of election responsibility. However, we are basically, Miami Beach would be hiring the supervisor of election to run our elections. And if they are telling us that it cannot be done as a runoff 2 weeks later, then we're kind of stuck with the charter saying one thing and the supervisor of election saying another. And given all of the complexities of elections that continue to grow, the laws and the various ways that people can vote now, I think the compromise that we all kind of landed on, and I'm not sure that we really liked the compromise, but we all landed there, is that we need to accommodate the additional time and provide for that additional opportunity for the runoff to be held properly. It's more important to get it right than to get it fast.
And George, didn't they also say that it was basically, we didn't have a choice?
That's what I was trying to.
We do have a choice. This commission meeting coming up. I think it's the only problem now in Miami Beach, because Coral Gables doesn't have that problem. They have runoffs.
This is
There are 4 cities that hold their elections in odd years in November. As I mentioned earlier, Miami, Miami Beach, Hialeah, and Homestead. And the supervisor of election, if all 3 of the other cities decide to have a runoff 4 weeks after the general, we're going to have to do that as well. We really don't have the ability to hold our own election. The supervisor is still responsible for dealing with the election, and they're just telling us that they will do it 4 weeks later. It's unfortunate.
So basically, if they give the ordinance and they commission votes, Nikki and Eileen Higgins and whoever else is there, if they vote for this, then we'll have to do it. But I don't think Miami Beach voters should be involved in this, because it's a Miami-Dade County issue. It's not Miami Beach.
Okay.
But let me ask
we got your
the
point.
caller, just, I don't know if you heard the answer I gave, but the problem is that now, and this wasn't the case years and years ago when this language was put in the charter, is that we have a large number of people who get a mail-in ballot. And 2 weeks doesn't allow enough time for something to be put in the mail for, because you can take up to a week to get stuff in the mail. For somebody then to be able to think about what they want to do, mark their ballot and mail it back and get it in time. It's not you're reliant on the US mail. And I don't think that 2 weeks allows enough time for that.
Yeah, do it. And, we're.
And George, if I could just add, not to drag this out, just but very briefly, the reason that the city's voters have to weigh in on this is because the change in dates would require an amendment to our city charter, and the charter can only be amended by a vote of the city's voters.
Okay.
All right, thank you,
Thank you.
Miami.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go to the next caller. Oh, it just disappeared for the second time, Ari. Do we have anything on the chat?
I think we just got a couple. Kindly elaborate more on referendum 6 with simple wording. I remember what happened previously, unfortunately, when we lost a nice commissioner all of a sudden. Thanks in advance. Great work, everyone. Referendum 6, a little bit more.
This is how we fill vacancies. And currently, the charter is a little ambiguous and prescribed on how that determination happens. And it is possible when you have, for example, one vacancy, that you can have 3 commissioners feeling one way, say wanting to have an election, and 3 commissioners feeling another way, say wanting to appoint somebody, and you would find yourselves at a deadlock. And if the dates prescribed in the charter run, we could find ourselves with no election or appointment and be left with 6 commissioners on the commission for the remainder of that term until the next election is held. What this proposes to do is say, we'll never find ourselves in that situation. It is presumed that in 30 days from the vacancies, there will be an election. Unless the commissioners who remain on the commission can find someone that can muster up the 5 votes or the supermajority necessary to get the support required. It's a high hurdle, but you might have somebody out there who could do that. But if they can't, then there will never be the loggerhead. If a tie means we'll have an election. I think that kind of summarizes it, right, Nick?
Okay, let me go to the next one then. I hope that answered your question. I understand it's too late to make changes, but I'm curious as to why in Amendment 1 were the last 2 bullets combined with the first one. I don't maybe think it's a typo.
If the caller is asking why did we include 3 bullet points rather than put it all in one?
I think so.
I think we try to, in drafting these questions, we're subject to a 75 word limit, which makes it very challenging to describe complex changes, especially with the Bill of Rights, where we're amending so many different sections. So we try where possible to break up these concepts into bullet points to make them easier for the voter and for the reader to understand what exactly the measure does.
And we really went round and round, sending it back over and over again, many of these items, so that they were as clear as possible for everyone to be able to understand, because I think we've all felt that things were not exactly clear for everybody.
Let me comment. It may sound like a lot, but you'd be surprised how little you can say in 75 words or less, and trying to get everything in there that you want to get in there. And so I congratulate Gene and Nick and all the drafters on this, because every one of these were challenging to get all of the concepts into words that would fit within the prescribed limits.
Yeah, the other thing that perhaps some people may not know is that the 75 words has to do with what's on the ballot, and we read some of those questions to you But behind that is the city charter itself with a number of different sections in it that are modified. And these ballot questions are only summarizing what the changes that occur. The actual changes are much more detailed, which is kind of what Elizabeth went through. What she read was not what's going to be on the ballot. What she read when she went into the detail was what the specific changes were to the language within the city charter. So all you have here, as I said, is a summary.
There was a lot involved.
Thank you.
This is what we ended up with.
Yeah, we have a couple more chats. Let me go through. Sorry. Oh, it says, I'm suggesting that the first one should have been 2 different amendments. I think that what I'm hearing around the Hollywood Squares is that the work was very tedious and difficult and specific, and you did your best to organize the language the way you could. Is that close, Nick?
Yeah, it's that coupled with there's a point in which you limit the number of questions that you want to put on a ballot. You get to a ballot fatigue. You'll recall these questions will come at the end of the ballot that voters will receive for the November election, starting with the president and working all the way down. And there's political science to the notion that there's a point in which too many questions and people just determine to either just vote no on everything or vote yes on everything or not really give it the due consideration. And 7 to 8 questions was about the limit that we set for ourselves as the number of questions we felt appropriate. And so sometimes we had to combine them.
Thank you. That's a great point. You don't think about that, but it's at the end of the ballot and people are over it by that time.
Right.
I think Valerie got a hand.
Yeah, we have another caller, Larry Sheffer. Please unmute yourself.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to say in less than 75 words, thank you all for all of your hard work. I know all of you guys have put so much effort into all this, and that we, the citizens of Miami Beach, appreciate your hard work. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And you're left with a few extra words. Anything else you want to say?
I'm leaving them for you guys to have. They're free
Okay.
words. You can use them.
Thank you.
You're hired.
Thank you very much.
Oh, we had Beverly. Beverly, do we still have a question? I guess not. Okay.
Yes, it's more than a question. It's kind of I'm elderly, and I see that you have written that you would like to have technology to send out the notices and all the information. We made a petition. Many of the elderly, over 30 people signed it and changed because the commission was going to do the same thing you were just talking about. And in this, what we asked was that you keep having the information put into the newspaper, because that's how we get our information. I think it's discriminatory against the elderly. Sorry to use that word, that you want to remove, as if I understand correctly, giving us the information in a way that we can most easily access it. And I would really recommend that you look at that again, and you could use both. And by the way, they looked to see how much it was, and it was only $300. So it's not expensive to have it in the newspaper. So that's one comment, if you want to take that as a comment. I know it's too late to change what you've written, but I don't know if you had any information or input from we who are in our 70s and 80s and use written rather than electronic means of communication. That's number one. And the second thing is that I still don't understand one thing that you brought up, and it had to do with if an item, and I wrote this, if an item, just explain this to me, if an item is not heard 3 times, it's removed. Is that what you're saying? Or did I hear something wrong? Because if that's what you're saying, I think that's very unfair. It should not only not be removed, it should be moved up to the top and heard immediately. So just let me know. Yeah.
Thanks, Beverly.
It's not so much that the item is not heard. It is what happens pretty often, unfortunately, is that an item is placed on the agenda, and then the commission doesn't get to it or chooses to defer it.
Correct,
And then it's placed on the next meeting's agenda. So you
correct.
go down there to go speak on the item, and they again
Right,
determine that they're gonna defer it, or it
Right.
doesn't get heard. And then they place it on the following agenda, and you again, as a resident, go down there to go and
Mhm.
speak on this item. And, because you're interested in it, and again, the commission says, oh, we can't get to
Right.
it, we're gonna defer it.
right.
What it says is if it's an item like that and it's deferred 3 times, then it can't be brought back up.
Yeah, I think it should be brought up at the top of the thing, because I've seen items that, sorry, that the mayor or so whoever did not want to bring up, and therefore didn't bring it up, and so it never came up. And I remember it was Kristen who had several items that happened to, and I think it's unfair. I think it should be the reverse.
Right,
I think that if an item is not brought up 3 times, it should be moved to the top and brought up, and then they can decide to vote it down or whatever they want. But to discriminate, again, discriminate against somebody who has put up an item, that item should be brought up. So that's
Thank
2
you,
things that
Beverly.
I feel strongly, and definitely, please look at the thing about keeping it in the newspaper.
Thank you
don't see
very
that it
much.
can make a
And
difference.
Beverly, just, I think we're trying to approach the concern from 2 different sides, but we're concerned over the same thing. We don't want games being played with the agenda and
Right.
have people show up to a meeting and then being disappointed because their item could not be heard. And so we're saying that there's some certainty to this. So either you hear it or you don't, but you can't keep playing until the day that maybe people who were interested decide they're not coming, and then they put the item and take it up. This is
I mean,
an effort to try
for example, one thing that can happen is, a commissioner could have some item that they put up there, looking at the other end way, and they see a large number of people there to speak against it. And so, oh, let's defer it.
defer it.
And then maybe next time we hear it, there won't be all these people there to complain.
Right.
So it, on the one hand, I get your point. It hurts those people who have an item but I think it'll provide an incentive for stuff to be heard before the 3rd time, because I'm sure any commissioner would scream bloody murder if their item wasn't heard within 3 times and was dropped.
Right. That was what I was just gonna say, Ron, is that the proposed charter amendment applies to items that are deferred by the city commission for 3 meetings. It has nothing to do with items that are not reached by the city commission.
And may I add one more thing? We had resident associations come and speak to us, and they were frustrated because a lot of the things that they take off time from work, they come in, they sit, and they can't keep coming back time and time again. It's not right for them as well. So that was a consideration also.
Thank you. So we don't have,
Claire, may I interrupt for a minute?
Sure.
Just wanted to also point out that we started today, we're delivering those notices that would be published in the website. We're delivering them to the libraries. So we've delivered sets of 20 copies today to all 3 libraries in the city. The senior centers will have some here at City Hall. So we are trying to mitigate those individuals who are used to seeing a paper and reading these information. So we are taking those steps we started today.
Great. That's good to hear.
We have a
Thank you.
question from Miami, but
Miami,
yes.
Miami, when you're
Miami.
unmuted, we're gonna make it a little fast since we're over our time, so go ahead.
Yes, hi. Talking about the deferment again, I agree with the last caller. This deferment doesn't make any sense whatsoever. They could call in. They don't have to be there. They have Zoom. They could watch this commission meetings. There's a lot of ways they could do that. I have friends that join, go to breakfast and see the commission meeting even on TV. And they have breakfast in the morning and do this. Yes.
Miami, with respect, do you have a question? Because we are a little short on time and I have a couple
No,
more.
I just have a comment of the previous caller that I also agree with her.
Okay,
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much. Let me just look in the chat. Do we have other hands up, Miss Valerie?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. One remaining question. How is public records access related to human rights protected groups?
I can take that, Claire. I think the caller is asking again about amendment number 1. And the reason there is that amendment number 1 is a summary of all of the Charter Review Board's recommendations for the Citizens Bill of Rights, except for the forfeiture issue, which is addressed in amendment 2. All of these issues that we've talked about, the right to be heard, the Sutnick Forum, the no unreasonable postponements, non-discrimination, all of those are in the Citizens Bill of Rights. So the board and the legal team did our best to compile all of those changes in one ballot question.
Thank you. George, we're just only a little over our intended arrival time. I'm going to put it back to you for closing remarks and anything else you'd like to ask or say.
I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. We have Tanya Bott that
Oh, Tanya Bott.
Tanya, please unmute yourself.
Hi, everybody.
Hey,
Hi.
Tanya.
I was thinking as I was listening to this, I'm so proud of you guys for doing this work, and I'm so jealous of not being a part of it from the MBU side. And then I realized, oh wait, I am actually a part of it, so it's okay. So thank you for putting this on. I've had a lot of residents reaching out to me because the ballot question wording is really complicated, even for those of us who have worked very hard on it and tried to understand it and explain it to people. So this is going to be shared by many, many people and to many, many people. So thank you for that. I have a question for Ralph and I guess for Nick about something Beverly mentioned. This has been a kind of a going back and forth concern about how to let our older residents know where to find notices of things. Does the ballot measure preclude us from, let's say for the next 6 months or whatever the right number is, while we educate our residents on how to do things differently, running a small ad where the notifications would normally go saying for, you know, letting those residents who are coming specifically to get the information, having a very simply worded message. If you're looking for the Miami Beach notifications, please visit our website and say, miamibeach.fl.gov/notifications, like super easy, so that somebody could type it in, find it on the website, and then, you know that that's where to go going forward. I know that's not all the way to not doing the electronic notifications, but it would help bridge the divide between the way people are used to having done it and what is coming going forward.
May I?
Yes.
Commissioner, so the Florida statute requires that we do such an ad at least once a year. We did that ad already for the ones that we're doing, and we took it even a step further, which is we did it in Spanish also and published it in El Nuevo. So we have taken those steps, and we actually, in the ad, we stated that we would continue to do the ordinances until the voters decide as to what to do with this ballot. So we did do it in English and in Spanish because we were afraid that a lot of the residents that get the newspaper, not only may they could be elderly, but maybe not speak English. So we're the only city that as far as I know, that did it in both English and Spanish.
But there's nothing precluding us from doing that again and not doing it just once a year, but maybe every month for the next 6 months, so that hopefully we would catch and redirect all of the residents who use this, and now they know where to go, what time of the month to go, and they can find the information they need.
There's nothing that precludes us from doing that.
Yeah, Tanya, the change in the ballot would only allow for the electronic, but it doesn't preclude you from substituting or doing other things beyond that. You just need to meet the legal requirement, and it allows you to do it in any number of ways, or all of them if you wish.
Okay. Alrighty.
And we would definitely do it, Commissioner, if this passed, even though the law doesn't require it. Since our ad stated, hey, we're still going to do the ordinances on a newspaper. If the voters agree to this change, we would certainly do the ad again in English and Spanish to letting them know of the new change, the new change, let's say. So
right. I guess, Nick, you and I can talk about this back at the ranch tomorrow. All right. Thank you.
so much, Commissioner Bott.
Commissioner? Anybody else?
My pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think it's back to you, George, to
Hey,
close.
man. Well, listen, we are not here to encourage you to vote for or against any of these. That is your decision to make, but we will encourage you to vote. So remember Tuesday, November 5th. There have been a lot of changes to election laws, so please look up, make sure that you're still registered, make sure that you're still signed up for your absentees if that's the way you've been accustomed to voting, and please go out and vote. That is the one true measure of our citizenship, is to make sure that we have the right to go and give our opinion on either side of this or any of the other ballot questions. So again, I want to thank my colleagues on the ad hoc Charter Review Commission, Ron Starkman and Elizabeth Latone, and the others that I mentioned earlier. Again, I want to thank the staff that was involved in this. It was long and productive, and hopefully, as your chair, hopefully it was fun from time to time. So with that, I want to thank all the people who are here and attending and are interested in this, and thank you for your interest in Miami Beach.
And I'd like to thank everybody for their time that they gave, also our city. I'm just, Ralph, Nick, everybody, Raul, Jane, thank you so much for everything. I know it was tedious and we went sometimes really late into the night, but I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Well, thank you all. It obviously, goes above and beyond just doing a little work on something. It's a labor of love. It's a mission to help the city. And everybody who attended, thank you for attending. Thank you for your questions and your thoughtful insights. Now, don't forget, everybody, that upcoming on October 25th, Commissioner Bott, who was with us tonight, will be our guest for our MBU Legislative Priority Series. Starts at 5:15 on Friday the 25th for members only. So if you're not a member, please hurry up and join so you can come to that. And in November, we're hoping to schedule a happy hour with our new city manager, Eric Carpenter, as our guest for meet and greet with him. So don't forget, there's no MBU without you. Love to everybody and many thanks to this wonderful panel for all.
I mentioned one thing Jean passed along, so I want to make sure that this goes as a public service announcement. I guess, Jean, a person could still register through October 24th for the next election. Is that the deadline to register?
Yes, that's my understanding. Correct, Ralph? It's October 24th.
And I've got some dates here. Also, October 7th is the last day to register to vote or change party affiliation. And also October 31st through Sunday, November 3rd is early voting. Thursday, October 24th at 5 p.m. is the final deadline for the County Elections Department to receive a request for vote by mail ballot. So y'all need to get that in. And also, they need to, let's see, Tuesday, November 5th, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Go.
So on.
Okay.
Ralph, excuse me. I think it's the deadline to register for a vote by mail ballot is October 24th. Is that correct, Ralph?
I think
That's
October
what
20th.
I have too, Jean. I think the deadline to register is what Elizabeth read, which is the
Yeah.
7th.
The 7th. Right.
Okay. Well, hopefully everyone will pursue it. If you didn't get it from all the information here tonight, and anything else from any of our panelists? No? Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone who attended. Thank you, Valerie, for a splendid job as always. And we'll see you all at the next MVU event. Bye for now. Have a great evening.
Bye, everybody.